This podcast, Strange, Rare, and Peculiar, is for kind of those in the know about homeopathy, deepening your knowledge, bringing you more information about what you need to know and maybe what you can leave aside about homeopathy.
Homeo what?
Homeo what?
Hello, good evening, good morning, good afternoon.
Here we are.
To know that it's feeding time at the zoo, so at any point
There will be animals. There will be creatures.
There are going to be creatures.
And so, or do you mean feeding time at the zoo that you brought snacks for me just in case? So we've got some pecans, we've got some chocolate.
I got chocolate.
And, you know,
Because it's not cocktail hour yet.
No, but it's darn close.
Yeah, we're getting close.
This changes everything, though, for the podcast. Because,
Why is that?
Well, because we have been doing the podcast upstairs in Alastair's office, so now we're downstairs. We're in the library, my office, which I would do a little video tour, except that it also happens to be...
No, it's wrapping
just
station.
A couple days before Christmas, and the entire library table is covered with presents, which is exciting.
It is.
Yeah, it is. So, we...
Dog.
There's a dog right here. That would be Ziggy.
Ziggy the dog.
So, you know Miranda Castro has a Ziggy. Miranda and Ellen have a Ziggy.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Okay, anyway, so what are we going to talk about tonight? Conundrum.
You want to call it conundrum. I want to call it where the domestic physician meets the commercial reality.
Oh, wow. You went there. Okay. Yeah.
And how how we've got to work it out.
So look, as we get started on this, I want to start by saying, you know, we have a pact that we make with ourselves and also with our students, with the HE and home community, and that is, you know, don't talk trash about people unless you want people to talk trash about you. So anything that we talk about today, and I really mean this, is there's no judgment, there's no none of that, because what we're really trying to do is to put out and contextualize a very real challenge that we face in the realm of 21st century homeopathy.
Right.
How does that sound?
I like it.
So when we address this, so we've got issues around economics, you've got pharmacies that need to make money, you've got legal issues, you've got sort of distribution issues where things placed in the stores and that vying for shelf space, right? So this idea of sort of...
You mean homeopathic products?
Homeopathic products, if they are indeed homeopathic, right? Because you've also got the misrepresentation of the word. And then you've got best practices in how we use these products.
And then you've got a whole bunch of sick people.
More sick people
than you can poke a stick at.
Or even shake a stick at. I wouldn't poke them.
Poke a stick.
You're going to poke them with a stick? No, then they're going to really need a remedy.
It's the traditional expression.
No, is it?
Yeah.
We say shake a stick.
No.
So, okay.
Overruled.
Plug
off.
I hope the lighting is... One thing I really liked about the podcast just being audio was I could be in my cozies upstairs in Al's office sitting on his little chair.
It was your idea.
It actually wasn't my idea. It was Sherry's idea.
Turn off the
I have to turn
notifications.
off Slack. Okay. That's the HHN clinic with a lot of things happening.
It's humming.
So,
okay, good. Yeah, you go, and then, because I'll be contextualizing it from a different point of view.
Well, why don't you start?
All right.
These are roasted,
book
unsalted pecans.
This book.
Domestic Physician? No. What do you have there?
Domestic Physician.
Oh, you do?
Constantine Hering. Nice little short book. And this book was published, it's interesting, I'm going to say...
1840s?
It actually says 1836. Which is amazing, because he's just been on the ground for a couple of years. So he writes...
Actually, it makes sense, because it would have been a time when there were very few homeopaths.
Very few homeopaths, no schools.
No schools.
All right, 1935, first school. And a very irregular level of and standards of education
Oh, totally.
when it comes to medicine.
I mean, Flexner wasn't published until 1920.
But a gigantic and growing and chaotic population,
Totally.
all crammed into the east coast of the US,
And
then starting to burst through.
Right, and medicine and the different medical modalities were interspersed. So you would have a practitioner of hydrotherapy, Thomsonian practitioner, your traditional herbalist, the allopathic doctor. You'd have people who were hawking patent medicines.
Yeah.
You had the beginning of the sort of mainstreaming of what we would refer to as mineral remedies, but done in their, like chemical compounds that were being sold.
Yeah. Chaotic times.
Yeah.
And pretty
no standards, no licensure.
average practices.
Oh, yeah.
And so then Hering sells this book.
Yep.
And it's interesting because it's not a book that's pitched at the mum. It's not a book that's pitched for the doctor either. See, it's all highbrow. When you read it, it's like, this is almost inaccessible if you are...
well, I'll get you the quote here.
Quote on what?
But I don't want to lose mine. So this is from... sorry, I'm looking at my notes for my thesis. So this is from a book, Naomi Rogers' book, I believe, who wrote a book about the history of Hahnemann Hospital in Philadelphia. It's called An Alternative Path. And I think, and I'm sorry, I wasn't prepared for this quote. I have another, but this is, in my notes, it says domestic quote here. Oh, this is from Hering's thesis. Materia medica is to Hahnemann what pathology was to Hippocrates. That's interesting. Anyway, domestic physician quote, no one can be a successful disciple of Hahnemann who is not well-versed in the learning of the Eidal schools, E-I-D-A-L. And it would be just as impossible for him to act judiciously without a knowledge of anatomy, surgery, and materia medica, together with mineralogy, chemistry, and botany, for a man ignorant of navigation and seamanship to carry a vessel with safety into port without a compass or chart. That's really interesting, that the person who has a book called The Domestic Physician, that 100 and some years later, or it has been reimagined to be a license for anyone to practice homeopathy or to use these remedies for themselves in their own home.
So let's just think about that.
Yeah.
Because medicine, go back 500 years, was cloaked in Latin and hidden. And
up until the Thomsonian era, who said
well, a little bit before that, because in the English tradition, Culpeper.
Yeah, I'm talking about America.
Right.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, we should explain that. So the idea was to move away from the German and Latin into bringing it into the people's native tongue. So into the English tradition was a way to bring medicine to the level of the people.
And you could do that with a printing press, so it's a big deal.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
And so there'd been various attempts at trying to, as happens with today in all sorts of different areas, let's demystify it, let's reveal it, let's get rid of the mythology around it, and let's fix sick people. All right, so there's...
Well, because also at that time, it's a move away from sort of these philosophical constructs that were happening.
Hello, Hildy.
This is Hildegard of Bingen. That's cat number 2.
Behave yourself.
So this idea was a movement away from the attempts to create a philosophical construct to explain how things work. For example, there was no such thing as germ theory then. There was, for a time they were called animalcules, right? So there's this way in which all these sort of, as Hahnemann would say, even in Aphorism 1, the footnote, so-called systems. And it moves into the development of therapeutics. In other words, how does medicine interact with problems? And that becomes possible over, through the arc of the 19th century when germ theory, bacteriology, pathology, and the development of a system of therapeutics comes into play, because around that time you've got greater diagnostic tools, you've got laboratory medicine, so you can measure, weigh, standardize, and all of that.
But all of that is heading towards the direction of this knowledge is expensive, it's technical, and we need skilled people to be able to interpret it and do it. Right? And so, yeah, I think that's a good landing place. So and therefore, we've got two kind of competing things going on, don't we? We've got a chaotic medical marketplace in America in the 1830s.
Yep.
And you've got this book that's pitched to the mum, but not written for the mum.
I think that's not pitched to the mum.
Well, it's interesting. Well,
because I think the word domestic.
Right. No, you're probably right in that sense, because it's kind of highbrow writing.
Yeah, totally.
Of the day.
I mean, think about the level of education that women had access to in that time. This would not be accessible.
Yeah.
I think this is about the physician using homeopathic medicine in the home, but it's been co-opted in a different way.
All right. So that part I think is probably true. Now that is one of many, because on here, on this
We have a
shelf,
lot of copies of that.
No. We got this one.
We've got the big one.
No, there's different domestic physicians, not just Hering.
Yeah.
So this one is by Poulter, right?
Yep.
Homeopathic domestic physician, treatment of diseases wherever you are around the place, from 1854.
Wait, can I see that for a second? Because I think in one of my talks I quote something from his introduction.
And then you got this puppy.
Here, so he says, this is actually interesting though.
Yeah.
He says, the homeopathic domestic physician containing the treatment of diseases. Now, right away, this is an argument in homeopathy, and we're going to talk about this a little bit, the Lippe-Hering argument, because are you treating diseases or are you treating the person, right? And so right away in Polt's, just the name of the book, it's the treatment of diseases with popular explanation of anatomy, physiology, hygiene, and hydropathy, and also an abridged materia medica. This is the 6th edition. And illustrated with anatomical plates.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I love that.
Anatomical plates.
I don't see any.
This homeopathic domestic physician, this one is Laurie from 1877.
Okay, so that's going to be totally different.
Right.
By the time you get to 1877.
Well, it's bigger, and there's no plates, I can tell you right now.
I didn't see any in here either.
But this is, so the point that we're making is that there's a movement, a paradoxical movement, historically, in medicine and in healthcare, and homeopathy is right in the thick of it, because these domestic physicians sold wildly, and while they might have been pitched towards physicians, they were also sold with the kit. They were also sold with the remedies.
They called it a box.
The box. And with the box of what, 10 remedies, 20 remedies, 50 remedies?
I'm going to say probably not 50, but it could be. I mean, think about the Civil War boxes, right? So
along comes the Civil War, and you've got accessible battlefield medicine ready to go for whatever drama that you as a jobbing physician, barber, surgeon has to deal with.
Well, at what point would you be both a physician and a surgeon? Because those were the barber surgeons and the physicians were totally separate, right?
Totally.
But on the battlefield, maybe not so much.
Now, I also just, as we start to settle in here and sort of contextualize, because you can tell where we're going, I want to talk about traditional medicine, because in traditional cultures, it's really interesting that the knowledge on how to heal is with every member of the community.
Sorry, before you go there... Because I wasn't paying attention. I'm really sorry.
Exactly.
Because I saw something that I...
Well, you're going to have to wait.
I can wait.
So,
wait.
In some of the traditional Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander nations, healing knowledge is a part of community knowledge and individual knowledge. If you scrape your knee, you fix it. If you've got a bit of diarrhea, everyone knows how to fix it. For the serious diseases, you call in the shaman. And it's interesting how that might have happened in Australasia. But the same thing is in Mayan medicine. The same thing is in North American Indian medicine, in Inuit medicine, in Mongolian medicine.
Right.
The shaman in a Stone Age culture, the shaman, you call on for the specifics and the difficult stuff, and that's when,
right.
You got your smoke and mantra and dance and trance and all of that stuff. That's
right.
the secret knowledge, and traditionally the shaman has been the weird one in the village.
I mean,
the gifted one, the red-headed stepchild.
Let the weird one. Don't say that.
Well, you know what I mean.
But that's
but the person with gifts that traditionally is on the edge.
And how many people who are listening to this who are homeopaths are going, I'm the weird one.
Yeah, well,
Weird ones unite. Yeah, I mean.
All right. So that's what I wanted to say. And in a way, that's been kind of in those suppressed medicines, because all of those medicines have been suppressed. Traditional medicines have been suppressed by conventional medicine to an extent. That dynamic was dealt with naturally within the community.
Well, it's really interesting because there's, I think,
Chocolate.
another way to talk about it is the idea of sort of home care. So this came up, I was teaching full-time year 1 the other day. And one of the things that Dasha asked a great question about, at what point do you just rely on on good home care and supportive, things and not give a remedy. And we talked about the fact that you give a remedy when things are stuck and the vital force doesn't have the wherewithal to move it through. And then, of course, some of those caveats where you give the remedy because the picture is so clear that we know the remedy is an assist for the vital force. It's going to, sort of speed the healing.
But this is it. So when is the practice of medicine domestic healthcare?
Right. It's genius. So, and
I think that, okay, now read whatever it is.
Well, hold on, because now you've opened another can of worms.
I need
a ball of wax. It's too early. So, this is really interesting because it intersects with our contemporary culture, which is give a pill. There's this expression people use in homeopathy, and I know it's done to be cute, but it's like, there's a remedy for that. There's a remedy for that. Yeah, there very well might be, but there comes a point when we need to ask when is a remedy needed. And so it's interesting because now you kind of changed course just a tiny bit, which I think has made this a more dynamic conversation.
Well, because I've got to keep you on your toes, because otherwise you just
I'll go right there. But you broaden the context a little bit, and so I think there's the first thing is like, if we just kind of look at ground rules and say, there is a lost art of home care. Now, there are definitely people here in America who come from cultures that have not lost that. Mm-hmm. But I think about my childhood being, raised for a lot of my life with my grandparents' generation. Mm-hmm. There were all sorts of things that they knew and did. And in fact, there was my aunt. So this one aunt who was married to one of my uncles who had passed, and her mother, who was much older, lived with her. So if I was, say, 12, this woman was like 95. So that would have made her born in the, the middle 1800s. I don't know, my math not so good anyway, but
yeah,
so
that's about right.
Yeah. So if you had a sore throat, you would go to her and she would take, and I'm thinking about one of my friends who may actually listen to this, who live next door to her, who would know this. She would take 2 candles and cross them and put them at your neck and say a thing or two.
Right.
That was, traditional.
Well, that's home, domestic home care with a slice of Catholicism and something else in it, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Not a slice of thick spread.
But home remedies, home care
would be anything from, we would have, chicken soup with pastine and an egg, stracciatella, you would have, and that would be, good home care. Well, I mean, that's, but then there would also be, the little bits and bobs of herbs and poultices and, all the things that were done.
Cabbages.
Yeah.
Onions.
Sure, for sure. Putting an onion in a cloth and, castor oil. I mean, these are things that a lot of, people who will be listening to this would recognize, because by the time you're listening to this podcast, you're like, of course, castor oil. But if you say that to, random muggles in, around the place.
Right. So wait, you're criticizing me for saying...
Don't say it! And I say random muggles?
Random muggles.
Nothing wrong with it.
That's all right. We don't have any listeners that are random muggles.
I don't even know who's listening to this.
Yeah.
Anyway, so on one hand, let's just say that if we're going to talk about the conundrum, the plural of conundrum is conundrums, not conundra, which I was about to say. That's not a word.
I think it's conundrum.
Conundri. So a conundrum that we have is in a time where self-care, traditional knowledge passed down through families, especially when families get scattered around the place, that sort of familial cultural knowledge gets lost.
Dissipated, totally.
It totally gets dissipated. So then there's a pill for that. And whether that pill, because in the culture that we're in, that pill is, God forbid you watch television. It's unbelievable in America. We were just talking about this in New Zealand. They don't have the medical ads like we do, Oh
my God, no.
It's unbelievable. So there's this idea that when someone is sick, you take a pill for it. It just easily translated into the realm of homeopathy. There's a pill for that. And imagine, and now we get into the conundrum of it, right? Because then that pill is available for sale over the counter or anywhere, really. Even some of the remedies that are not meant to be sold directly to the consumer, there now is, there's I don't want to say a black market, but there's certainly a network where you can get any remedy that you want, regardless of your sort of knowledge of what to look for, to give it and to assess its action.
To manage the case.
Yeah.
And you're right.
And can we add to the conundrum is that people are sicker than they used to be. An example that I use that always, it still shocks me now that I had this moment, but it would have been when I first moved back to Philadelphia from Minnesota to practice here in 2006. And I'll never forget the first time I saw a kid with Crohn's disease. It was in 2006. And the kid was, 7, 8 years old. And I thought that this was like for the Guinness Book of World Records. You know what I mean? I thought this was, you don't see kids with autoimmune diseases now, of course, they're rampant, but that was the first time I had encountered it. And the parents said, there was an entire specialty clinic at Children's Hospital. Now, of course, it could just be that those people were not seeking out homeopathy care. But even in the large number of, clients that I had encountered in, prior years of practice, I had not seen that. Now, autoimmune diseases in kids are rampant, which means, those used to be diseases of maturity, and now they happen in childhood, which means that the garden variety kids' ick that they get, the crud, the coughs, the little skin eruptions or whatever, once you know your homeopathic philosophy, you recognize that those are then attached to, inextricably a part of what homeopaths refer to as chronic disease.
Yeah.
And that's through the lens of Hahnemann's chronic diseases, not,
So is that, because we sometimes kind of, we lazily, maybe lazily talk about acute and chronic disease. But there's two pieces before that are super entirely appropriate to be dealt with home care. Right? Indispositions.
Define. People need to know what that means.
A hangover.
It's always the example. I knew you were going to say that. It's kind of things that you do to yourself, things that happen to you.
Yeah, like an indisposition. Like I am feeling nauseous because I just ate a whole block of this chocolate.
Raspberry chocolate. It's good. It's
really good.
But imagine, right, you eat too much chocolate or we had a curry for lunch,
That was
a
delicious.
spicy curry.
And then you've got domestic, simple first aid situations.
Totally. Everyone should have access to an instruction in how to deal with first aid, both practicalities, how to clean a wound, what not to do, but also those homeopathic remedies that are indispensable.
Yeah.
Bites, stings, cuts, burns, simple, uncomplicated, true acutes.
Deal with them. And so these remedies for those two things are easily found over the counter. You go down to Whole Foods or wherever. Mm-hmm. But also, like you said before, for a mere $35, you can buy a pack of oscillococcinum.
So I bet most people who are, well, everybody who's listening has heard of oscillococcinum, because if you're listening to a homeopathy podcast...
How do you say it?
Oh, I say oscillococcinum.
Oh, my God.
What do you say? Oscillococcinum?
Oscillococcinum.
Okay. I like that.
Yeah.
Do you say podophyllum or podophyllum?
Neither.
What do you say?
I say...
Podo.
I say podophyllum.
Podophyllum. Yeah, not podophyllum. What's another one? Ledum or ledum?
Ledum.
Yeah.
Ledum. No, I'd say ledum, actually. Ledum. I don't know on that one.
You know, I
always say colophylum.
Not colophylum. I don't think that's it. That's like saying calendula instead of calendula.
Calendula.
Yeah, no. Which I like. The one that I can't, like, I'm sort of fine however people pronounce things. We kind of, like at the school, we kind of develop conventions, so we all...
Not lachesis.
That's the one I can't stand.
I can't stand that.
I can't get with lachesis for lachesis.
And I've actually learned over the years to just ease up a little on carcinosinum, because it's a different remedy, actually, to carcinosin.
Oh, because it's brunette.
Yes.
Carcinosinum is
I never
brunette.
realized that. I just thought it was ignorance. But it's not.
Yeah.
Apparently.
But so what... Wait, are you
we'll
talking about the carcinosin is the one that Phobister writes on?
Yeah.
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 I mean, and now, I mean, it's actually a really interesting example, because, I mean, I almost feel like in a public space that this is going out to even talk about some of the intricacies that this might put up. But okay, so without going into the, y'all who know why we're, kind of putting the brakes on a little bit, but it brings us back to this idea of the conundrums.
All right. So you get to the conundrum.
Well, how do we, and again, no judgment. This is really, I think, a conversation we all need to have, because can you imagine saying to a parent, you can't help your own kid if that parent has a remedy kit? But at the same time, sometimes giving a remedy that isn't well indicated, or repeating something too much or whatever, can actually make the case more difficult. Now, and we see this in our clinic, and I now feel...
A lot.
We see it a lot.
Yeah.
And when we talk to our friends in other countries, they can't believe what happens in America. And generally they're like, America. But I don't think that's not a good excuse.
Or the
right?
raise of the eyebrows.
Raise of the eyebrows. I mean,
wow.
So here's what I want to talk about, though.
Oh, no.
You're going to have another snack. So we have sort of given ourselves this permission, because the father of American homeopathy, Constantine Hering, right, founder of the first school, the Allentown Academy, and, kind of and he just looks so cool. And anyway, but he wrote The Domestic Physician. So it's like, well, the domestic physician, therefore. Okay. So one of the things that part of my research for my thesis, I mean, this has changed me just irrevocably as a homeopath, because, a phrase that I actually have been using in my notes of my thesis is, you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube.
That's not a homeopathic expression?
No, but
it's describing something.
Well, yeah, because, what happens when... Well, anyway, we'll go there in a second. So in this research, right, so I have been reading every single journal start to finish proceedings from conferences from, say, 1860-ish, 1850s on up to the around 1890. And it takes a long time. So I'm going through all of these, and I'm reading the arguments and the tensions. And, we'll talk another time more about Hering and Lippe and their challenges and their arguments, which are they're as real today as they were then, right? But Hering is such an interesting foil because he brought us so much, but his sort of medical experience and knowledge and his sort of adventurous spirit to incorporate everything new in science is at times at odds with Hahnemann's philosophy, right? So we were talking about before, go back 15 minutes, about sort of this time in the middle of the 19th century when there's a movement from sort of ideologies and philosophies of medicine and how things work into the application of therapeutics. And there are a lot of things that happen because homeopathy is inextricably the marriage of therapeutics to philosophy. Once you take these remedies outside of Hahnemann's philosophy, you're sort of barking up a tree that you're not really sure what's going to happen because we don't have all that knowledge. Yes, we have clinical data, but a plug for our upcoming talks in January. I'm doing a reprise on the history of Hahnemann's homeopathy, which is a reminder of his discovery and his sort of ability to extract spirit from matter and the very exacting instructions he gives for us to use it. And I always go back to, if I don't understand what that means, I have to ask myself, am I willing to take a risk to use medicine that is essentially spirit extracted from matter in ways that deviate from the principles that Hahnemann rolled up with, right?
Take a breath. Wow. So you're saying, because I think I'm hearing you say this.
Am I saying it differently? Go on.
But I don't know if I can articulate it back.
Are you allowed to eat pecans during a podcast?
Rogan has cigars and beer, doesn't he?
We could do that. Anyway, go on. He has red wine and steak sometimes.
I totally lost my train.
Oh,
Homeopathy is... I heard the last part, but you said something about homeopathy is growing at a time in medicine where it's moving from the application of speculation, or no, theory, to the...
Unfounded theory.
Yeah, unfounded theory.
But Hahnemann's theory was different because it was grounded in the laws of nature.
But what the rise of science did was to focus on therapeutics and the action of drugs only.
Yeah, well, etiology, it's basically, you get into this reductionistic portion of scientific discovery and you're breaking everything down to its smallest possible identifiable part, right? Which becomes the germ, the bacteria, whatever, right? So anyway, so here's the thing. Yep. Now let's go back to Hering, right? So this, the domestic physician and it giving us license to do whatever we want because back to the father of homeopathy. But here's the thing. In going through these proceedings, it was not universally smiled upon.
Right.
So Lippe, so I'm reading now from, this is quoting from, oh geez, now I lost my note. It was from 1867. I'll find the reference. Sorry, but he says this is during this is an IHA conference, so the International Hahnemannian Association, and they are having their annual meeting, minutes from their meeting. So this is a conversation where Lippe says he's talking about a paper that was written, and he says there's a good lesson in this paper. That patient of yours did not follow you. If I understand right, mercury had been given. You selected the proper remedy. Why did that remedy not show any improvement in 12 hours? Because the patient's disease, anyway, he goes on about the disease, but he says, the first lesson that we learn is, he goes into more detail. The domestic physician and domestic remedies have done lots of harm in this world. If they give the wrong remedy, you have to overcome the effects of that remedy. In my families, there are very few domestic boxes anymore. Then someone named Dr. Bigler says, Dr. Lippe's warning here is a good one, but the difficulty is to avoid these dangers. It has been a great problem in my mind how to do it. I object to domestic boxes, and my people, his patients I assume, understand my position regarding them. I take a firm stand with them in this respect, that if they dabble with diphtheria, they must not send for me. I will not prescribe for a case if they have made a single prescription. It is a very great difficulty, and we can hardly avoid it unless we are strenuous in regard to it. But what will you find? You will find that they've given 3 or 4 or 6 doses of some remedy or several other remedies before you are called in. Just as sure as it is done, as Dr. Lippe says, you will have a bad case. I find since I have followed the instructions of Dr. Gregg and have been careful in my prescribing, I have not, as a rule, been obliged to give more than 1 dose of medicine. Now, it may seem strange to you, but it's a fact. And no imagination or illusion about it. It is a fact. I have had in the West the worst abuses I've ever had in my life as far as my families who had boxes and were disposed to treat their own cases and then call me in to prescribe afterward are concerned.
Yeah.
And then he goes on. And I have in my notes loads more on this discussion. Now, as I said, no judgment. And a conundrum. And you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube.
Yeah. And what we deconstruct that, and essentially it's a case. We all deal with cases that have been messed with allopathic, conventional medications. We deal with it, as best we can.
And it's not as hard. I don't think.
But it's interesting
hard
to manage. And for me, the issue is manage, because I'm not. Let's just talk about the management of cases as they unravel and begin to get better.
Because that's the thing. I mean, if we just take that idea, right? The most important thing in homeopathy is case management.
I agree.
Second prescription and subsequent prescriptions. Second prescription being the one after the first remedy acted, right? And most remedies act.
And so, I mean, the implication here is that our work is cut out for us as, skilled people. We've been doing this 25, 30 years. Our work is cut out for us now with these situations where so much has been taken homeopathically.
I honestly don't know what to do about it. I have a couple of cases in my practice right now. And anybody who knows me knows that I lead with my empathy. I can't stand to see people suffer, especially kids. And I was an anxious mom when my kids were little. I'll fully own that. I'm an anxious mom now.
You are.
We worry about our kids' health, and I think it's a universal sort of thing, right? So what do you do when somebody comes to you and you know that you could have done a much better job some time ago if their kid hadn't had, and I'm not exaggerating, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 remedies. I had never seen until recently, people come with a spreadsheet of what they have taken. These cases, I've got somebody in my practice, I showed you that email and I said, I am so afraid that I'm being harsh because I don't want to give a remedy because I cannot tell what is happening because of all the prescribing. But what do we do? What do we do about that? And I also don't want people to worry. I also cannot stand when we drive through fear. We cannot lead with fear. So if you're freaking out and going, oh my gosh, my kid, or I did this, I'll give you my version of absolution. You can't look back. You can only look forward.
Well, there's a degree to which the remedy, and homeopathy is forgiving. It's, it is.
I disagree.
You don't think it's forgiving?
I am seeing now cases where you've got people who have complex autoimmunity where it's not forgiving. I almost don't want to say this in a public space, but it's, Okay, so we're talking about conundrums though, right? So we've got a conundrum of there is a word on the street, homeopathic remedies are safe, full stop.
Yeah.
And it should be homeopathic remedies are safe, comma, when used appropriately. Like anything. Water is safe, but drink enough water and all kinds of things can
Lettuce.
happen.
Lettuce is theoretically safe.
Curry.
Delicious.
But too much of it. So, right?
So that's really interesting. So 140 years ago, 150 years ago,
Yep.
they're having the same conversation.
Yep.
And that's really interesting because that's so two physicians in a conference talking together, one saying, yep, I don't go anymore. And it's really interesting because I would have told you recently, about my about getting grumpy with a client that just it's like first reaction to anything is to hit it with a dose of something. Now, and my job is to educate.
Right.
Just are you aware that what you've just done is follow a remedy reaction, or at least as this aspect of the case management which is going on has been occurring, you have now done this.
Yeah.
And so it's almost as if there's a lack of acknowledgement of the importance of case management and a total understanding and a total belief that it's all good, that homeopathy is safe.
It is safe. I think we need to say it is safe.
Well, it is.
So this is what's interesting too, because again, I want to have at this from the standpoint of conundrum. Okay. Oh, and also wait, one thing, because what we need to do a podcast on is talking about acute versus chronic issues.
Uh-huh.
And we should get Priscilla on. Priscilla Metters has written the best book on, and I don't say this lightly. And just because she is a student of ours, it is the best book on the intro to homeopathy. What's it called?
No idea. But it's
I've
great.
got it on my desktop, and I will find it and say. But we should have her on because the way she talks about acute versus chronic, in the way that just a garden variety consumer who's learning about homeopathy needs to hear it. And I think sometimes someone who's newer to homeopathy has all the facility and language because it's the way they need to hear it. We talk about it to homeopaths. Anyway, and she's adorable and funny, and her writing is so good. I love it. Okay, so this is from, what's his name?
The domestic physician, Laurie.
This one I didn't know about. I didn't even know this was on the shelf. So,
got 2 copies.
Homeopathic treatment is always safe, rapid, and effectual when correctly applied, or it is void, that is, nature unaffected, when it depends upon mistaken hypotheses. I nowhere, in bold, enjoin the layman who has means and immediate access to efficient homeopathic professional advice to undertake the treatment of dangerous diseases without it. I only endeavor in a measure to provide for those who do not possess such advantages. I think that's great, and I like that as a middle ground, because I don't think you should say to someone, you can't figure out how to deal with a bee sting or an earache, especially if you don't have access to care. Now, access to care has gotten better, but access to quality care still is somewhat suspect. But the part that I don't think gets discussed, and I wonder if 140 years ago, there was as much worry about chronic disease like we see it today, autoimmunity.
No, definitely not.
Right? Fully developed SORA, a multi-miasmatic, convoluted disease that needs to be picked apart over time in order to ensure safety.
Let me give you a metaphor. Do you remember before we went to New Zealand?
Yeah.
You decided on the night before we're flying.
I know what you're going to say.
To
get my knitting ready.
Get your knitting ready.
Yes.
Right? And so, folks, if I can paint a picture.
Well, these are homeopaths. They're going to be knitters. They're going to know.
So I'm going to get the words wrong. But you went and bought 3 skeins.
Good. Yeah.
All right. And you came back and then you set up your umbrella, whatever, machine.
And the ball winder.
And the ball winder.
Yep.
And then you clipped it onto the table and then it fell off.
Like
and
I
then
do. Right.
You clipped it on again and it fell off. And then you called me. And then I said, what are you doing, honey? And you said,
I said, what do you think I'm doing?
It's 11 o'clock at night and we've got to fly and da-da-da.
And I said, I need knitting to do. I'm traveling. I have to.
All right. Anyway, so you start to make your ball of wool and then the machine's not working. Right? And so we've got...
I think I'm the only person on the planet.
We have a ball of wool that it is a dog's breakfast. It looks like a magpie nest.
It's unbelievable.
On the 3rd year. On the 3rd generation of magpies that have been brought up and were born there. and it had spit in it as well, and whatever else.
Well,
goes
do you
into
know the analogy that Jeremy uses about Jeremy Sherrill, we're talking about dealing with a chronic case? He says it's like a ball of wool that the cat's been playing with all day, dipped in marmalade.
Good.
It's like the best analogy, right?
It is too. Anyway, my father and I spent probably...
Because I brought the knotted wool. I traveled around the world.
And so she's sitting knitting and you're doing great work. And then my father and I couldn't stand it anymore. And so we started to unpick the ball of wool. And then it took a whole evening for the two of us to then create a new ball of wool.
Such a bonding moment.
Oh, it was lovely. Oh, my God. Can I tell you about the...
Did you finish your metaphor? But what does it relate to? You just told a story about wool.
Oh, and I didn't actually get to the punchline?
No.
What was the punchline?
It's your metaphor.
It's picking apart that...
Yeah. The complexities of case management.
Yeah, it is. And it's such a skill. And the satisfaction in guiding someone through the highways and the byways and the new symptoms and the old symptoms and the aggravations and the proving symptoms of well-selected remedies over a period of time.
That's it.
And getting them to a new state of... restoring them to an old state of health or getting them to a new state of health, depending on your interpretation of aphorism, whatever, is so deeply satisfying.
It is totally deeply satisfying. And can we talk... Since this is getting long, so we need to wrap this up. We could do more another
45 minutes.
I know, but it's the solstice. We're going up.
All right, see you, bye. I want to talk about the bandages.
This whole video thing is a totally different... Well, okay, we can do that. But can we talk about the economics for just a second?
Oh,
because
sure.
I would actually... Can we save that for the acute chronic? Maybe we'll do that one next.
All right.
And then we can talk about it.
Oh, that's a good idea. Let's do one next week.
Yeah, let's do another one. So I think it's really interesting, though, that one of the challenges that we have in homeopathy is around the economics of it, right? So, for example, oxylococcinum. We started to talk about that, or coccinum, however you say it. Okay.
$35.
Well, wait, hold on. You get... So, we were talking about this earlier. So, it's 200C potency. Duck. What is it? Duck?
French duck. It's a very specific duck.
Yeah.
Heart and liver.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is good for symptoms of cold and flu.
I mean, from the clinical trial, symptoms of subacute symptoms as a flu comes on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pap and Furley.
What? That's who did the...
Yeah, two studies. Yeah.
Okay, so here's the thing. You've got a 200C vial. Just like every other 200C vial that you have, lasts you almost a lifetime. No. But if you go to Costco, you can buy it by the crate.
Right.
And people take a whole 200C. It's not a half dram, whatever it is. It's probably a...
It's a dose. It's brilliant marketing.
It's genius. And God bless them for making up the slack on the money that isn't made on individual doses. I mean, and we haven't even talked about the true dollars that need to go into all the sort of evidentiary build up to have remedies be sold, OTC, both from the pharmacy standpoint, the marketing standpoint, all of that. But if you think about it, there's an inherent challenge financially in homeopathy, because if you think about a practice, people get better, they don't need you anymore, right? If you, and with the remedies, because it's about the minimum dose, you technically don't have to sell a lot of it. I mean, if you think about just thinking about LM or Q potencies, well, okay, we, for ease with our clients, have them order it already made up in a dispensing bottle, but theoretically, you could have, your LM kit and have a gazillion doses of LMs in your one little kit. I mean, it's right. So if you think about the business model, these pharmacies, I mean, I really feel for them, because they're at odds with what, really the true homeopathic intervention
it's really
is a
interesting.
minimum.
I never thought they'd be. I don't think they're tearing themselves apart on the inside. I mean, they've got their market over the counter, and then they've got their professional market, and some clearly support and only do over the counter.
Right.
And some support the professional and do it really beautifully, but they don't make their money there.
They don't make their money on the true treatment of disease. So the OTC market is where the money is made.
Totally.
Okay, that's great. And I love that, there's like all the rub-on stuff, whatever, yeah. But what happens when you've got our deepest acting remedy of sulfur, OTC, buy it at Whole Foods, and it says on it, what does it say? Skin eruptions or something like this. I don't know, whatever. How many times have we seen somebody who has taken way too much of a deep acting storic remedy have a big flare up, say, of skin symptoms? Because you've got to know how to use this powerful medicine. So it's a conundrum, right? We love when we can say to our clients, oh, you have this acute, go get this at Whole Foods. It's perfect.
It's convenient for sure.
It's totally convenient. Because we don't have the pharmacies the way that you get in, in the UK. Go to Ainsworth's or go to, what do you call it? Nelson's. Helios. You can buy retail, and you can go, and they have people who are doing, consultations there. You go down a little stairway and go into the consultation room. So there's a way that we've got this, we like have the best possibilities, but we haven't managed ourselves really well. But you don't want to tell people that they're wrong. And we also want people to learn about homeopathy. And how many times is there the beginner's luck? Somebody has all these amazing things happen when they first discover homeopathy. But that time period, it's when I hear somebody who doesn't have a lot of knowledge, medical knowledge, risk knowledge, homeopathy knowledge, who says, yeah, I've been working with my friend who has a cancer or Parkinson's or whatever. It's wait, what? Do you know? Because then what happens if, forget about the legal ramifications for the profession, but what if somebody gets hurt? What would you do, right? Because, what is it? Unconscious incompetence. How bad would somebody feel if they inadvertently, messed up? Do you know what I mean? That tears me apart.
Do you worry about it? No, because I spend most of my life conscious about my incompetence.
I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about in the wild.
Well, you said how would I what?
No, I mean, do you worry about this? This doesn't keep you up at night.
No, I worry. No, I worry about other. Look, I do to an extent worry about that.
You worry about the All Blacks.
Stop. No,
that's the New Zealand rugby team.
I worry. Do I worry? Yeah, I do worry, but I cannot control that situation that you just spoke about.
But what if we have these conversations?
I can weigh in and have a bit more make contribution to the students that are studying.
Yeah.
We can teach them excellent case management. We can start to make the transition from unconscious incompetence to conscious incompetence,
which is a tough place to be.
That's a tough one, but that's usually second year.
Yeah.
and then there's that beautiful seamless transition into conscious. Did I say conscious incompetence?
I've lost track.
Conscious competence.
Yeah.
And that one is where you've got a person that's got a prudent practitioner that has their hand on the handbrake, that understands case management, that seeks supervision, that goes through the necessary steps of being educated in a powerful thing.
Totally.
And it's
because it's powerful and amazing medicine, which everybody, people who've come along, right? So we're gonna wrap up because we're 53 minutes in and it's 6 o'clock and it's the solstice and it's stag and dough night in our town.
All right.
So I want to leave this on a positive note, though, and I think the positivity is that when when you turn the light on, you can have the conversation, and I think conversations that can take place in non-judgmental spaces are really important, right? No judgment, nothing except educating people and making high quality care available. And that's what HHN, right? So as part of Home Foundation, we have the Homeopathy Help Network. And, we've seen over 4,000 cases since we started in March of 2020. And we're actually working on how do we expand it so that we can train up more practitioners, because getting hands-on supervision for real-time acute care can be challenging. And then being able to scale up so that we can serve more people, right? It's really hard when we can't actually take care of all the people that need help. And then, of course, people resort to doing if we're saying, don't take risks because there can be an outcome that you're not expecting, but we can't provide a solution. Well, what are you going to do? Say, don't do anything, right?
No.
That's the conundrum.
Yeah. And there's also another part of it, but it's not an uplifting part of it.
Then let's not talk about it.
Okay, but therefore, I want to talk about losing faith in our institutions as a phenomena that's taking place in our time at some point.
Okay.
Because I think there's a legitimate reason for folks to want to take back agency over their health
100%.
and their education and so many. What do you think you're doing?
That's Hildegard Bing, and she's back.
There's Hildy's ass.
You got a cat butt. Sorry, everyone. It's feeding time at the zoo, as we said.
So you understand what I'm saying?
I totally do. And you know what? And it circles us back to where we started.
Well, I think that's just uplifting because I totally support that.
Yeah.
You know, that empowerment that takes place.
Yeah, 100%. But isn't it better, like, let's say that, like, kids should be able to get to where they need to go when they need to get there, but someone who's 7 shouldn't be driving a car. This is coming from a person who has 2 adult children who don't drive.
Yes.
So maybe my metaphor is a little bit...
No, it's a good one. I'll get my license soon, I promise.
I want to know if anybody actually, like, if this as a video is compelling, or do we just go back to our upstairs space where I can just have my cozy sweater on and a scarf and a beanie indoors and not think about the fact that I didn't actually do a face?
Give us your feedback. Folks, take care. It's solstice night. So enjoy whatever you do on solstice night. And we'll see you soon.
It's the longest night.
It's the longest day
Which
if
means
you are living
tomorrow,
elsewhere.
Well, yeah. But here, tomorrow is the day where there's more light.
It is.
The beginning.
I'm excited.
Me too. See ya.
Ciao.